morning, everybody. How are you doing this morning? All right. Are there any questions over the readings? All right. If I could get some assistance, I didn't realize the board's not working. So I don't know if you could help me out with that. So as soon as we get the opportunity, we will dive on that. All right. So this is your quiz for the day. So, what is Operation Overlord?
It was the operation to attack Hitler's Atlantic Wall,
Okay.
the coast of France.
Yeah, so it is the invasion of France. They call it the Atlantic Wall because he has all his guys, protecting the coastline. How successful is it?
It was successful.
Okay, if it was not successful, we would be seeing a Nazi Europe right now, right? So, yeah, it was very successful. All right. Usually I play a little clip of Saving Private Ryan to kind of give you a perspective of what the guys went through. So when we say, hey, this was a really successful thing, it doesn't mean it's easy, right? I was told that I can't play clips because this is on TV, but I do want you to know this is a tough fight. It's a difficult conflict, and so even though we get through it in 2 days, this is a 4-year-long battle with lots and lots of people dying. So, all right, we're gonna dive back. What was the last thing we talked about last class period? Pearl Harbor. All right, the invasion of Pearl Harbor, or the attack on Pearl Harbor by the Japanese. I think I mentioned this was not intended to be a sneak attack by the Japanese, right? They had planned to declare war, but at the end of the day, took too long to translate and took too long to get to where they were trying to head to let the U.S. know. So it becomes a sneak attack. This is used by the U.S. because everybody's angry, right? And they're saying, hey, this isn't right. These people attacked us without declaring war, and so now everybody wants to fight. U.S. declares war December 8th, and then the next thing that happens is what? Can you guys see the slides?
Germany and Italy declared war on the U.S. 3 days later.
Germany and Italy declare war on the U.S. This is probably the stupidest thing that they can do. So, if Germany and Italy do not declare war on the U.S., then who is the U.S. going to fight? Japan. Japan is the one that attacked us. So everyone is angry with Japan. We're all going to fight Japan. But once Germany and Italy declare war on the U.S., who is the biggest threat? Germany. Because one, we think they have the atomic bomb. And two, if they take out England, there will be no way to get to Europe. Whereas Japan, we believe we can go in and protect, you know, starting with Australia, we can roll in and protect them. So the U.S. leadership decides what we're going to do is we're going to hold Japan, stop them from moving forward, and then go back and fight with Germany and defeat Germany, and then come back and defeat Japan. Does that make sense to you guys? All right, so what do? We do just that. We go ahead, and in April of 1942, we fly over Tokyo with some with some bombers. We actually lose pretty much every bomber that we send over because it's just such a long trip. Some of them survive into China, but at the end of the day, they're not going to be able to be used again. So why would we give up all these bombers to make an attack on Tokyo that's not really that big a deal? So Japan has this feeling that they are the children of God, that they are, no one can attack them successfully. They fought with China, many years before. China was actually sending a fleet. The fleet was going to destroy Japan, and a tsunami comes through and wipes out the Chinese fleet. Russia is coming in with their fleet to attack Japan, and they defeat the Russian fleet. So they think they are invulnerable to attack, and no one can attack the Japanese mainland. The Doolittle raid is basically just saying, we can attack you, and we will be back to do so. So don't think that you're invincible. Let's get it in your head that the U.S. can attack you now, and we will attack you later. So we do the Doolittle raid. The next thing that happens is the Japanese are planning to attack down in New Guinea, right? This is a big deal for a couple reasons. One, if you look, New Guinea is a pretty big island, right? So if they get on there, that's going to be a big deal. What else do you see down by New Guinea?
It's right next to Australia.
It's near Australia. So it threatens two major areas, and we're like, okay, we need to figure out what to do there. We have broken their intelligence code. We've broken their ability to talk in code. And so we now kind of know what they're doing and when, right? And we realize they're coming down there. So we bring our aircraft carriers down there. They have their aircraft carriers down there. And for 4 days, we fight with each other. This one is kind of a draw because they sink some of our ships, we sink some of their ships, but we prevent them actually completing the attack. So it's a win for two reasons. One, they don't get to attack, and two, if they destroy our ships, what do?
We can make more.
We build more ships. If we destroy their ships, they don't have the capability to rebuild. So if we can even fight them and come to a draw every single time where they lose the same amount of ships that we do, we win because we have the capability to rebuild. The next thing, they decide they're going to attack Midway Island. Midway is out here, amazingly enough, midway across the Atlantic, right? If they attack Midway, why would they want Midway? I mean, realistically, is there anything on Midway that is super exciting that they need? And the answer is no. So why do you think they might want to attack Midway? What might that do to the U.S. ability to fight back?
I mean, we can send troops there. The troops could be stationed there. It'd be easier for them to attack the United States because it's not as taxing of a journey to get there.
Yeah. So if they have guys here, Hawaii's right here, we will have to fight them here rather than over here. So they go ahead and send their guys to Midway. We send guys to Midway. At first, we really don't know where are they talking about. And so one of the intel guys comes up with a really good idea, and he goes, you know what? I know how to get them to at least document their word for Midway. And so he sends word out on the radio in open, radio. Hey, the Midway guys, the Midway Island has lost all of their fresh water. Now, is that a big deal? Yeah, if you're in the middle of the Pacific Ocean and you don't have water, that's a huge deal. And so the Japanese immediately repeat, hey, Midway has no water. At that point, they go, yes, this is the same term that they're using for where they're going to have the attack. So we know that they're going to attack Midway. We go ahead and send our carriers there. This one, again, is kind of funny because our carriers go there and we know that the Japanese are bringing their carriers in, but we don't know where the carriers are. They don't know that our carriers are there. So we basically both, are sending out planes to figure out, they're trying to figure out where they're going to go. We are sending out planes to figure out where they are. And so we're kind of cruising around looking to make sure, can we make this fight happen? And we are able to find them. In this one, again, it's a pretty long battle, but we sink 4 Japanese fleet carriers and we destroy their naval air power, which at this point, they no longer have a capability to push air power forward and take more areas. So that's really good for us. Now that we've kind of slowed them down, what is our next goal?
Germany.
Yeah. Going up to Europe. So what is Germany doing during this time? Germany has engaged in Operation Barbarossa. If you remember, the Germans and the Soviets have made this 10-year treaty that we won't attack each other, right? How long does that last? Not very long. So within 2 years, the Germans invade the Soviet Union. 80% of all German military forces go into the Soviet Union. Their goal is to just roll in and take the Soviet Union out, and then they can come back. There's 34,000 tanks, 2,700 planes. This is one of the biggest attacks the world's ever seen. If you notice, they are hitting Leningrad, Smolensk, and Kiev, which, fascinatingly enough, why is Kiev a big deal now?
Is that where they are attacking in Ukraine?
Okay, it's Ukraine. So the Germans are rolling in south to Ukraine, and then they're going to move on into Stalingrad. They're going to hit Moscow and Leningrad. So their goal is to take out all the big cities. If you are Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union, what do you think your biggest concern is? What do you want your troops to protect?
Capital.
Your capital and your big cities. So he tells his guys, you guys need to go out, you need to fight, and you need to protect the cities. Now, there are a lot of Soviet soldiers, right? Because they have loads and loads of people. But they, and this is an area that we're struggling with now. For a long time we've said the Soviets were not well trained, they were not well equipped. I still think that they were not as well equipped as the Germans were by any means. And there were many times where you may have had a guy who, you know, you're on the front line, you don't have a gun, so your guidance is, hey, when the person in front of you dies, you pick up their gun and use it. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to be on the front line waiting for somebody to die to pick up their gun. That's, you know, not my goal in life. So this is a really, really big deal. The Germans roll in, they capture over 700 Soviet troops in the first few months. So 700,000. What is 700,000? And I meant to look this up again, but anybody know what size Tulsa is?
Size or population?
Population of Tulsa.
400 and something thousand, 450,000.
Okay. Tulsa is 450,000. Oklahoma City, I think, is probably around 700,000. So they just took the entire city of Oklahoma City in prisoners. And then near Kiev in September, they take another 650,000 people. Just think about, these are the people captured, not the people killed, not the people who are wounded. You have 130,000 people who are captured by the Soviets. I'm sorry, by the Germans in just a few months. All right, so what do you think Stalin's doing?
He's trying to join the Allies now.
He is now screaming for help. You guys have to do something. You need to help me. Why are you letting Germany do this? Now, I will say it's a little bit hypocritical for him to do this, right? What was Stalin doing when Germany was invading France? Nothing. In fact, he made an agreement not to fight with them, right? So he's got a treaty. He's like, yeah, we won't do anything while they're destroying France and while they're bombing England. But now that the fight is in the Soviet Union, he's like, oh, wait, you guys need to help me. You know, you guys need to come in and fight them. So Roosevelt says, all right, you know what? By the end of 1942, we will come in and we will attack in France. Stalin's like, yes, make that happen as soon as you can. Churchill is like, you know what? That's a really bad decision. Germany has all these troops around this area. He says, you know what? It'd be a much better deal. Let's come down here and we will take out North Africa and we will take out Italy, because he believes the Italian troops are a lot weaker and we can defeat them quicker, and then we can roll up the Italian peninsula and attack Germany from the south. So Roosevelt says, yes, that makes perfect sense. Let's go ahead and do that. All right? Now I have congressional elections up there. Why do you think I put congressional elections up there? What does that have to do with the war?
Well, you have to have your government support to be able to even enter or do anything. If they find that it's not beneficial for them, they're not gonna be like, you can't do that.
Okay, so the congressional elections are coming up in 1942. And Roosevelt is concerned because if you slam everybody into France and hundreds of thousands of people die, and you don't take France, what's going to happen in those elections? Yeah, the Democrats are not going to be reelected, and in fact, people who are against the war are going to be elected. And so he could effectively lose the war if enough people get voted into Congress that would be against the war, right? Because Congress would say, nope, we're going to stop this war. All right, so they decide we're going to go down into North Africa. The question is, why is Germany in North Africa? If you look between Italy and North Africa is what body of water? Mediterranean Sea. And the Mediterranean Sea connects in Egypt to the Suez Canal, right? On the other side of the Suez Canal is what? The Middle East. Why do you think Egypt wants to control North Africa and the Suez Canal and the Mediterranean?
So we can get to the Middle East.
The Middle East. What's in the Middle East? Still is?
Oil.
Oil. Do countries need oil at war? All right. So Germany wants to control the Mediterranean for trade. He wants to control the oil coming in from the Middle East and determine that Germany gets it and not the Allies. So he tells Italy, you know what? You guys want to be big boys? You go down and you control Africa and we will take over Europe. Germany doing a good job taking over Europe, right? The Italians roll down and they take over North Africa, but as the Brits decide, hey, you know what? We're going to go down and we're going to fight in Africa. Now the Brits start defeating the Italians very quickly and they start rolling up Africa. Why does Hitler want Africa again? To control the oil, right, and trade. So can he afford to lose this? No. So he actually has to send down German troops to fight in Africa. He is furious with this because he's like, I handed this to Italy. They're supposed to handle that. We've got Europe. We're not supposed to be dealing with this. But now he has to take troops out of Europe to fight in Africa. Now, if you think about it, where is he going to have to take these troops from? The Soviet Union. So he's got to reduce his fight against the Soviet Union to handle this mistake that he believes that Italy did, right? What does this do to the war, to the battles in the Soviet Union? Now he has less troops. He can't just keep pushing, right? Now he's got logistics down into Africa. He's got logistics over into the Soviet Union. And I guess I should be clear. Logistics is sending food and ammunition and clothing and everything else you need for the war. You have to keep your guys supplied, right? So now he's got supply lines running into France. He's got supply lines running south into Africa. And he's got supply lines running out to the Soviet Union. So this is a lot of effort to keep all these things going. Long story short, even though the Germans do a better job, the US and England are able to defeat Germany. They take 250,000 German and Italians prisoners. So soon we are able to take North Africa. When we're done taking North Africa, where's our next step? moving north into Italy. So we roll into Sicily, the little island off the boot, right? And we take Sicily, and as we're moving into Italy, we are driving up into Italy. Guys throw out Mussolini, and they say he's an idiot. We really want to be on the Allied side. Is this a good thing? Yeah, I mean, it's a great thing if you think about it. I would much rather win a fight because someone says, okay, we don't want to fight, than have to have hundreds of thousands of people, you know, spend months killing each other to accomplish the same thing, right? The problem is the Italians are like, okay, we want to make a deal that's best for us. So they start making deals, they start coming up with ideas, and this is what we want. Oh, well, this is what the US and Britain want. And so in all the discussions, what do you think the Germans are doing?
Pushing down further.
Yeah, the Germans realize what's going on, and there are all these mountains in this area between Austria and Italy, and they roll in and take over the mountains in the north of Italy. Now this is a huge deal because any military guy knows when you're trying to fight, you want the high ground. Why would you want the high ground?
Can see who's coming in and stuff.
You can see who's coming. When you shoot, you can shoot further from higher, you know, because if you're shooting up, it takes, you know, gravity is going to impact the distance your bullets can go, right? Whereas if you're shooting down, they're going to go a lot further. So now we go ahead, we get the Italians to change sides, but at the end of the day, we still have to fight the Germans, and now they're entrenched in the mountains. Let's go back to the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union is fighting Germany. Millions of Soviets are dying in this fight. So again, Stalin's like, you guys have to come and help us. May of 1942, England finally sends a plane over and bombs Cologne. Now the reason that this is important, how long has the war been going on so far?
3, 4,
Yeah,
years.
it started in 39, right? So it's 42, May of 42. And this is the first attack on Germany. Everything up to this point is Germany attacking outwards and us defending, or we were able to take North Africa, but that still has very little impact on Germany itself, right? So we finally are able to bomb Cologne. And then July of 43, another full year, the Soviets finally are able to start pushing back. Now, going into the Soviet Union is always a difficult thing, right? Why?
It's cold.
Okay, one, it's really cold there. And two, it's just huge. So the Germans, if you think about it, I'll go back to the map. The Germans are sending their troops from this area all the way across here. So they have to figure out, how do I fight? How do I get all my supplies out here? How do I get winter clothes to my guys, ammunition, the appropriate guns, the appropriate stuff? Also, every spring, because the snow and everything is melting, all the stuff turns into mud. So you're having to replace vehicle tires, you're having to replace vehicles because they're getting stuck. So it's just a really ugly time. The other thing that we start discovering, when the Germans have attacked, if you remember, I said in just a few months, they have gotten 130,000 POWs, right? How do you take care of 130,000 POWs? Can you guys see this bottom picture here? All right. What do you think that is? Yes, it's a German POW camp for the Soviets. Do you see any fences? No. They basically just herded them together, and they put guys with machine guns on the outside, and they said, we're going to try to give you food, we're going to try to give you stuff, but at the end of the day, we really can't do much for you. And so they provided food, but you still had a lot of people die. And in the battles, you had a lot of people die. The Germans decided that they didn't have the time and the energy to bury all the people who were dying. So they just started stacking bodies up in the winter. And they figured that in the spring, the Soviets would be able to take care of it. But so the Germans finally get to the place where they just can't handle it anymore, and the Soviets start pushing back. But again, this is July of 43, so almost 5 years in, right? All right, the big three, Roosevelt, Churchill, so Roosevelt's US, Churchill's British, and Stalin is representing the Soviet Union. So they are the big three powers that are still fighting the Germans. They get together and they meet in Tehran, and they say, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to win this war? And the US and England say, all right, you know what? We have tried to come up the Italian peninsula, and now we're going to go ahead and we're going to invade in France. And Stalin's like, yeah, it's about time. Which they were too polite to say, but I've been like, yeah, let me talk about the Ribbentrop-Molotov, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Let's talk about the treaty that you made while the Germans were attacking France. But at this point, everybody's like, look, we just got to keep this thing going. So they say, all right, we will attack in Europe, we will attack in France, and let's figure out what are the goals at the end. And Stalin says, my goal is to control all the territory around the Soviet Union so that no one can ever attack us again. What is the U.S. goal? What did Wilson say in World War I is the goal of the U.S. for everybody's government?
Democracy.
Yeah, we want everyone to pick their own government. How does that work with the Soviet Union is going to control all of the territory around them?
Means all those territories are going to be communist.
Yeah, it absolutely, it can't work, right? One of them's going to happen, the other one's not. So Roosevelt and everybody basically just says, okay, you know what? We will get to that later. We're not going to agree right now, so let's get to that later. I do want to hit, there's some other things that go on that I think are pretty cool. The Germans have this little box, and I don't know if you can see the box, but it's basically a typewriter that you can set it up and you hit a key, but instead of typing a T, it will type an E. And so what the Germans do is they have all of these boxes set up, and you say, okay, this is the code that we're going to use today, and you punch in, the translator, and it will say, okay, boom. Now when I type, it types it in code. No one can read it, except when it gets to the second typewriter, you say, okay, I want to uncode it, and everything comes back, and you're like, okay, this is the message. Back in 1931, a French spy steals the instructions and the operating manuals for the Enigma machine. Why do you think France is stealing this in 1931? France and Germany have been fighting for hundreds of years, over and over, right? And so they're like, you know what? If we have the chance to know what the Germans are doing, we're going to do it. In 1933, the Poles build their own Enigma machine, which is this code machine, and it works. So this is a good thing for the Poles, right? Because the Germans probably are going to be attacking them in the near future. In 1939, they give their machine to the British. Does that make any sense? Okay, Drew is saying yes. Why?
Poles aren't doing much fighting.
The Poles are getting ready to die. The Germans are invading, and so they're like, you know what? We're not going to win this. Here, Brits, you use this, and you defeat the Germans, and you will help us gain our freedom back, right? And so the British update the abilities, and by May of 1941, the Brits actually sink a submarine. And they go to the people on the submarine and they're like, hey, we want you guys get out of the submarine. We'll get you on our boat. We'll save you. We'll take you prisoner, but you'll be okay. The Germans agree to it. And then right as they're getting on the boat, the last guy is getting on, the Brits are like, we're going to run down and make sure that there's nobody else on the sub. And they run down there, and instead of checking to see if there's anybody else on the sub, which I'm sure they did, they run down and they know where the Enigma machine is, and they take the Enigma machine and they steal it. Why is this a big deal?
Because they have the machine.
Now they have their own machine, and so whenever the Germans are sending out word, hey, this is what we're going to do, the U.S. knows exactly what's going on. And they have the one from submarines, so now they know what all the submarines are doing every single day. For this reason, they can use these machines to know where the Germans are in the Atlantic, and as they are sending supplies and men, they know where the subs are, and they just go to different places. So this helps make sure that all the U.S. personnel and all the U.S. supplies are going to make it safely into Europe, which has a huge impact on the war. The other thing is they start bombing the German industry. And again, some people say this is not as big a deal. Some people say it's a huge deal. But if they can take out the German factories and prevent the Germans from building new weapons, this has an impact on how well the Germans can fight, right? All right. So the U.S. says we're going to go in and we're going to invade France. If they just say, hey, we're invading, I don't know, in Pas-de-Calais, and that's where they go, what's going to happen?
The Germans know where they're.
And if the Germans know where they're going to attack, what are the Germans going to do?
Defend it.
They're going to have all their forces there, and it's really, really hard to do an amphibious assault. You have to get from the water onto the land, and I will tell you, not from personal experience because I have never done an amphibious assault, but I have had to go through rivers with weapons. This is not a fun thing. Your clothes are heavy, you got to keep your gun out of the water, you know, and when people shoot at you, bullets ricochet off water, right? So they don't have to just hit you, they have to hit near you and the bullet will ricochet and be able to take out lots of people. So this is a really dangerous operation. Your enemy is on the ground, you're in the water, you're trying to get to the ground, you're trying to get to the place where you can make a difference. So they're like, we want to try to convince them that we're not coming when and where we really are coming. So the Allies come up with this huge, huge plan, and they say, all right, we're going to convince the Germans that we're going to attack in Norway and in Pas-de-Calais, which is this little area here, which is the closest you can get on the English Channel, right? So it makes sense to attack there. And so how do they do that? They have radio messages with fake units. They create these huge fake units. They put out tents, hundreds of thousands of tents out on beaches and out on roads, and they drive all sorts of people back and forth. They actually create balloon tanks, which I would really love to have one of those because it just sounds super cool. But so if an aircraft flies over, they will see hundreds of tanks parked next to each other, but they're really just balloons. Does this work? Yes. The Germans actually believe that all these things are real and that they are attacking in Norway and in Pas-de-Calais. So, June 6th of 1944, the British and the US actually come into Normandy. Now, if you notice, this is not this far, right? So once they start attacking, these guys should be able to roll down and fight in Normandy. This is the D-Day attack. So as you're rolling in, everybody is starting to hammer you. The U.S. starts with air attacks to try to control the air. As soon as they do this, some of the Germans realize, wait a minute, they're going to attack here. So they call back and they go, hey, we need all the guys up in this northern area to come here because they're going to be attacking here. The one thing that saves us is Hitler. Hitler has said, do not change any of the defensive areas without asking my permission. Right? Now, that's kind of a stupid move. But what's really stupid is he does that and then he goes and takes a nap. Why is this really stupid? What do you know? Anybody know anything about Hitler's personality?
Narcissist.
He's a narcissist, yeah. So when they go and they try to tell him about what's going on and they see he's taking a nap, does anybody want to wake him up? No. Nobody wants to be the guy to wake up Hitler and give him bad news. So they're like, we'll just wait till he wakes up. Well, the cool part is, at least for the US and the British, while he is sleeping, the attack continues, these guys don't move, and we're able to get on the beach. One other thing that I forgot to throw in there, they actually came up with this amazing idea. The British grab a homeless guy that has died, and they put him into a Navy officer uniform. They put some orders in his pocket talking about this fake attack, and then they let him off in the ocean. So when the Germans, they've already seen all of these fake tanks and ships and planes, they've all seen all this stuff, they've heard the radio messages, and they believe, hey, there's other attacks are happening. But when they find this body wash up on shore and it's a Navy officer, and there are orders in his pockets about, hey, you're supposed to be going on this attack against Norway and Pas-de-Calais, then they're like, oh, yes, this is true. So this is why Normandy works. The Germans are ready for these other attacks, and they don't respond quickly enough to Normandy, so we get people on the beach. Now, had they at that point decided to take everything they have and shove against Normandy, they could probably have still driven us off the beach. We just weren't strong enough yet. And so the Germans the Soviets do a really good thing. Operation Bagration, and you guys don't need to know all these names of the operations, but it is the biggest attack in all of the world at that point. And they take everything they have and they start pushing in against German troops in the east. Why is this a big deal for Normandy?
Because that means they're going to send troops from the west to go fight in the east.
Yeah, so now everybody they have that's over here has to go help over on the Eastern Front to fight back the Soviets So they don't have the ability to expand and drive us off the coast. This is the positive. Now, the negative side, the poor Poles, the Germans have invaded Poland, right? And what was the deal that the Soviets and the Germans made back before the Germans attacked the Soviets?
Don't attack me, I won't attack you for 10 years.
Okay, for 10 years, right? Well, I'm not going to attack you, you're not going to attack me, and we're going to divide Poland. So the Germans have taken half of Poland, the Soviets take half of Poland. The Soviets actually are driving in and they're pushing the Germans out of Poland. When this happens, the Poles are excited and they're like, yes, let's help the Soviets. So they rise up, and all of the guys that are Polish military, kind of, have any military training at all, start fighting against the Germans. At this point, the Soviets actually stop moving forward and let the Germans kill hundreds of thousands of Poles. And then once the Germans have completely defeated the Poles, then the Soviets start moving forward again. Why would they do that?
Wear them down.
All right, what is the ultimate goal of the Soviets after this is over? They want to take all this territory, right? Stalin has already said, my goal is to have this, surrounding area controlled by the Soviet Union. He doesn't want to fight these Poles later, so he's like, you know what? Instead of me fighting the Poles, what I will do is I will let the Germans fight the Poles, and the Poles will kill some of the Germans will kill the Poles, and by the time we roll in, nobody will be there. It'll be a much easier way for us to roll in, and the Polish Revolution is dead, the rebellion is dead, and they won't be able to fight us. We will just be able to take over them, and the Germans will be easier to defeat. So, long story short, the Germans are now getting squeezed on both sides, right? The US and the British are pushing in from France, and the Soviets are pushing in from the Soviet Union. All right, let's go back to the Pacific. The Pacific is some stupidity. You have Nimitz, who is the top naval admiral in the Pacific, and he sits down and he says, look, it's a bunch of islands. So what we need to do is we will take the key islands and we will bypass all the smaller islands. And we will roll in and we will take all the islands out, skipping all the little islands that we don't need to worry about. And then we can roll in and take Japan. Now, if they can do this, then they only fight in the key islands. Every other one, if you leave Japanese troops on an island, as long as they don't have an airstrip or as long as they don't have a way to get big boats there and you don't let the boats roll back to that island, are they a threat to anyone? No. You just leave them there and they will fend for themselves. But they're not, you don't have to fight them. Whereas the army under MacArthur is like, no, what we want to do is we want to hit these big islands down here and come back through the Philippines. Why would the army want to go through these major islands in the south?
Because the army's all about fighting on land.
Army's all about fighting on land. So they don't want to have big chunks of sea that are controlled by the Navy. They want to fight through the land so that they can get the credit. So the top 4-star Army general is fighting with the top 4-star Navy guy, right? Who wins that fight? Nobody. So they take it up to the Secretary of War, they take it up to the Secretary of the Navy, and they can't agree. So who is the next person to go to? the president. And this is okay with Roosevelt. You know, part of me says, I would have said, look, you guys need to figure this out. You know, don't make me fire people. But Roosevelt likes to be the guy in charge of making the decisions. So he flies out to Hawaii and he says, all right, you guys give me your arguments. Which, you know, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? And so they both lay out their arguments and tell him, hey, this is our plan. He says, all right, let me think about it overnight. Some people believe that he was ready to go with the Navy and that MacArthur came to him privately and said, hey, I just want you to know, if I don't get to do the Army thing, then that will give me free time. I might retire and I will run for president in 1944. Is this a big threat? Yeah, it's a real threat because MacArthur is a war hero. He has a lot of credibility, right? And we're fighting a war. So at the end of the day, Roosevelt goes to sleep. The next morning, he calls in both sides and he says, you know what? We're going to do both. Which is really kind of stupid because it just ensures that there's more fighting that happens. So the Navy and the Marines go through the islands. MacArthur and the Army come up in the major islands from the south. They do have the Battle of Leyte Gulf. And in the Battle of Leyte Gulf, it is a naval fight. This is when we actually take out the Japanese, the majority of the key Japanese fleet, and they realize that they can't win anymore. They start going with kamikazes. So what are the kamikazes?
Suicide bombers?
Yeah. So I'm going to train a person to get into a plane and I will train you to take off, but I don't need to train you to land because I just need you to fly into a ship and hopefully you will die and your plane will blow up, but you will kill hundreds or thousands of Americans and sink their ship. So this is when we realize, okay, the Japanese know they're not going to win, but they're still fighting. And their goal is, I want to push the U.S., I want to make this so difficult for the U.S. that they will just agree to treaties that say, you keep what you have and we'll walk away. All right, so back in the U.S., 1944. Every 4 years we have an election, right? We don't have MacArthur running. So Roosevelt is running for a fourth term. Again, this is unprecedented. The Republicans select Thomas Dewey, who is the governor of New York. The Republicans say, look, Roosevelt has too much power. We have to stop, and he's borrowing too much money. This is just a really bad decision. The Democrats, Roosevelt refuses to campaign. And he puts out word, I'm the president, I am too busy fighting the war to campaign, but don't change the president during the middle of a war. That's stupid. And so at the end of it, FDR gets 25.6 million votes, Dewey gets 22 million votes, but FDR takes the election again. So he is our first and only president that has been elected 4 times. Is that ever going to happen again? No, because right now people get so ticked off that as soon as the war is over, Congress says, you know what, we're changing the rules. No one can be president more than twice. So, all right. The leadership meets again in Yalta. And this time they talk about, all right, we are going to win. Now we really have to decide what is going to happen when we win. And they decide we're going to divide up Germany so that Germany cannot threaten anyone anymore. We're going to split into a Soviet area, a British area, and a US area. We're going to have war crimes trials. Why do you think you want war crimes trials?
To see who just followed and who actually, like, planned for destruction.
Okay. Why? What is the purpose of trials? Is it you want to convict the people that did thing, right? And put them in jail so that they can't do it again. But it's also to deter other people. So they're like, we're going to have these war crimes trials so that not only do the people who are doing this never do it again, but also so that people who are thinking about doing something like this will never do it again. Stalin actually says, yes, you know what, you guys are fine. We'll go ahead and give everyone democratic governments. Does he believe this? No, not at all. And once we take out Germany, we're going to continue to have to fight Japan, right? So the US says, look, we really, really want you to be able to come in and help fight Japan. And the Soviet Union says, okay, at a certain point after the war with Germany is over, we will come in and we will help you fight Japan. But if we do, we're going to take Japanese territory and it will be Soviet territory. And the US says, okay, that's fine. The United States nations, we decide the League of Nations didn't work, but we're going to come up with the United Nations. And we realize that one of the problems with the League of Nations is that when people got ticked off, they just left. So we come up with the Security Council. And the Security Council is the largest, most powerful nations, and they can talk to each other kind of in private session. All right. So the Allied armies keep pushing German forces back. The Soviets are driving them from the east. The British and the US are driving them from the west. Eisenhower, Dwight D. Eisenhower, who was a 4-star general with the US Army, becomes the overall commander for the western side, for the British and the French and the German and the US troops. And so they are pushing. Churchill is really scared, and he says, I don't trust Stalin. If Stalin takes Germany, he is going to use this after the war to harm us. And he says, Eisenhower, you need to move your troops faster. You need to get to Berlin before the Soviets do. Now, Eisenhower is a general. He is concerned with political stuff, but he's way more concerned about the lives of his men. And he says, you know what? I'm not going to race. I'm not going to have hundreds or thousands more people die because I'm trying to race the Soviets. We'll get there when we get there. So in 1945, Roosevelt dies. The timing is crazy. So he goes down into Georgia to a spa because his health is bad. And while he's down there, he dies. They notify Truman. Truman is now the president, right? Truman has no idea. Roosevelt and Truman didn't get along. What do you know about Roosevelt? What is his background? He's wealthy. He's from the East Coast. He's gone to all the right schools. He knows all the right people, right? What about Truman? Is he from the East Coast? No. He's from Missouri. Did he go to all the right schools? No. Does he know all the right people? No. So Roosevelt's like, look, I brought you in because I needed someone to help me pick up the Midwest. But I don't really want you talking to anybody or doing anything. So when Roosevelt dies, Truman doesn't know that we're working on the atomic bomb. He doesn't know what agreements we've made with the Soviet Union and England. He doesn't know what our plan is for winning the war. And so as he rolls in, the press notifies him, hey, you're the new president. And he says, boys, if you ever pray, pray for me now. I feel like the moon, the stars, and all the planets have fallen on me. Think about this. You are now responsible for a world war and the post-war, all the agreements. And he's like, wow, I am not ready for this. Now, the positive thing is, Roosevelt dies in April. In May, what happens?
Berlin falls and Germany surrenders.
Yeah. Berlin falls to the Soviet Union, and when Berlin falls, Hitler commits suicide and Germany surrenders. It actually takes a while for Germany to surrender, which is really sad and really stupid. But when Hitler dies, who's in charge? Exactly. He had designated someone, but right before he died, he found out that that person was planning to leave, and he's like, well, I hate you now. You're not going to be in charge. And so basically, when he dies, no one really knows who has the ability to surrender. So finally, they're like, 5 days later, look, Germany surrenders. The other thing that's kind of ugly, and actually there's some pictures up here, as we are rolling in and as the Soviets are rolling in, what do we find? Concentration camps. One of the students here actually has done some research into our rescuing the people from the concentration camps. And one of the things that she found is that the guys who rescued the people, they were more shocked by the sights in the concentration camps than they were by the war. So war is a really ugly thing, right? But they said that they got to the concentration camps and they saw people that basically were skeletons, walking skeletons, because they had not been fed in so long. The conditions were so horrible that when they would break into the camps, the people would come out, and any decent, normal human being, if you see someone who is starving to death, what are you going to do? Yeah, you're going to give them food, right? And so they would give them the food that the soldiers had. But they had not eaten decent food in so long that when you gave them food, it actually killed them. Their bodies weren't capable of digesting real food anymore. And so they had to tell people, look, I know they are starving to death. You cannot give them your food. And so this is a huge deal when you think about it. There were some of the U.S. Guards, in fact, the 45th Division from Oklahoma and Texas, National Guard guys, rolled in, and some of them actually started lining the German guards up against the fence and shooting them because they were so appalled at the conditions. And they had to say, wait, you can't do that. We will do our best to take care of these people, but this is illegal for you. You can't violate international law because they violated international law. We will go ahead and try them. We will do the right thing, and so you need to take care of it. Now, why do I make such a big deal about this? There are people who are saying this never happened. In fact, I have now had a student who said, well, this is proven to be false. If you don't think it's true, please come by and talk to me, because there's loads and loads of evidence. Not only do you have pictures, Eisenhower went through and he's like, take pictures of this because I don't want people to say this never happened. So there's loads of pictures. If you go to Germany, the camps are still in existence. You can go look at the camps and see them. Yes, ma'am.
Don't they also have like documentation where they talk about the concentration camps from like Hitler's reign, like he's talking about
Yes.
how they're different, they're not the, what does he call it? They're like the supreme human race, and that they needed to be in camps like this. Like there's a lot of paperwork.
Yeah,
and stuff
there's
like
all sorts of documentation saying that this happened. So I just want to make sure if anyone ever says, oh yeah, this didn't happen, it wasn't that big a deal, please have them come and talk to me because it's a huge deal. All right, so we have defeated Germany. What's our next goal? Defeat Japan. So we have already started rolling up. We have taken back the Philippines. MacArthur is a narcissist, so he gave himself a Medal of Honor for taking back the Philippines, which really infuriates me because the Medal of Honor is for guys that are like, you are risking your life, and 4-stars don't tend to risk their life taking over islands. So now we start rolling in, we start bombing Japan. We take Okinawa. So the island of Japan is this long island, and at the bottom is kind of it's a big island, but comparably it's smaller, and it's Okinawa. The Okinawas do not consider themselves Japanese, but the Japanese consider Okinawans Japanese. So we rolled in, the US and our allies roll in, and with 180,000 soldiers and Marines, we attack into Okinawa. Now, if you think about it, there was 150,000 that rolled into Normandy in France, right? So we are really expecting the same level of fighting in Okinawa as we saw in France. As we roll in, there's nobody fighting with us. And we're shocked. And we're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We have never seen, why aren't they fighting? And so we start moving across the island, and what we realize is the Japanese have dug themselves in entrenched defensive positions. And so as we're coming across the island, so they're not going to fight us at the coast because they know we have all the battleships, we have everything to harm them from the coast. They're like, we're going to wait, and when you're just men against men, that's when we're going to fight you. But we're entrenched, we're, in areas you can't see us, and you are walking out undefended. So this is when we start having some huge fights. The other thing that happens is they have told all the people in Japan that the U.S. is evil and that we want to harm them, we will rape the women, we will torture the children, do all sorts of stuff. And in fact, one of the things that they told them is the U.S. Marines, in order to join the U.S. Marine, you have to kill your own mother. Which, if that were true, I think there would be a lot less Marines, right? But this is what the people of Japan really believe. And so as we're rolling in, we see a bunch of women and children and farmers, and they're all on the edge of a cliff, and they all have like sticks and homemade weapons to fight us. Well, that's silly. Our guys have guns and different kinds of weapons, bazookas, all sorts of stuff, and you're standing there with a stick and you're going to fight me. And so we say, just stop. And we start moving toward them, and all of a sudden we realize that the women are throwing their children off the cliff behind them, and then they're jumping off the cliff. And we're like, whoa, stop. What is going on here? And when they finally have somebody that can translate, they understand that all of these people believe that the U.S. is going to come in and kill them all and torture them all. And so they are going to all jump off the cliff rather than allow themselves to be captured by the U.S. So now the U.S. has to rethink, what are we going to do? If they are willing to do this in Okinawa, what are they going to do when we get to Japan? Are we going to have to kill every single Japanese man, woman, and child? When are they going to surrender? And so, again, you have the kamikaze pilots, you have this code, the Hammurabi Code, that says we're not going to surrender. We're not going to allow you to capture us. So we'd rather commit suicide than do this. So we sat down and we planned what would it take to win this war. And they decide it will take 1.7 million to 4 million US casualties and up to 10 million Japanese casualties to win this war. This is a big thing. Do we want up to 4 million people in the US to die and up to 10 million people that are Japanese to die? No. So how can we win this?
Get it over quick and easy,
Force them
as
into
fast as you can.
All right, we have the atomic weapon and we say, okay, it is probably better for us to use the atomic weapon. Then the other thing that's scary is the Soviets say, okay, we're coming into the war. We had asked them to come into the war, but the problem is when we'd asked them, we didn't realize in Germany and in Eastern Europe, anywhere that they entered, they don't leave. They keep their troops there. And we're like, man, if they bring their troops in, they will take over Korea, they will take over China, and they will take over Japan, and they will never pull their troops back. So we're like, we have to win this war quickly, and we don't want all these people to die. So Truman at Potsdam says, look, you better surrender or face prompt and utter destruction. We have 2 atomic bombs ready. One is a gun type that you throw an atom into a bigger group of atoms. The other is basically crushing them together. We have tested the implosion version. We're pretty sure the gun type will work. So when we go out, we drop a bomb on Hiroshima. We're like, hey, are you guys ready to surrender? And the answer is nope. So 3 days later, we drop a bomb on Nagasaki and we say, are you ready to surrender? At this point, finally, the emperor surrenders. But a lot of people say, oh, well, the Japanese were going to surrender anyway. To clarify, even when we did the atomic weapons, the military tried to have a coup to overthrow the emperor so they would not have to surrender.
Let's see.
So, all right. So now we've defeated Germany. We have defeated Japan. Why did the U.S. and England choose to fight in Africa?
The underbelly of like the German Empire would be easier than just going straight into France, where many troops would just die.
All right. So they think it'll be easier to do that. What's Operation Overlord?
The Battle of Normandy.
Battle of Normandy, going into France, and it was successful, right? What are the different goals at Yalta? The Soviets want to have this surrounding area, but the U.S. wants to make sure that people have the ability to select their own governments. And then the U.S. used the atomic bombs because Japan was not going to surrender, right? All right. So when is the midterm exam? Coming up Monday. All right. So if you have questions, let me know. All right. After the exam, go ahead and read these pages. These are not to be read before the exam. I just know when you come and take the exam, you're not going to worry about asking me what pages to read for the next class period. So I try to put that up there now. All right. If you have any questions on the exam, please let me know, and I will try to make sure I get you help. All right. Any other questions, concerns, thoughts? All right. I will see you guys later.